Raw vlog recorded in front of a live beverage, delivered to you raw and unedited. Raw vlog recorded in front of a live beverage, raw and unedited. Good morning and welcome to Raw vlog number 51. As so stated in the song, raw vlogs are recorded in front of a live beverage and delivered to you raw and unedited. This is Raw Vlog 51, and we're going to be doing the 6K Ask Me Anything in this one. Why 6K? Largely because right around when I hit 5K, there were a number of things going on, and it just kind of made it weird to wedge it in there. So we ended up hitting 6K in the meantime, so pretty cool. We are talking, however, about my main MTB ALAN channel, which that corner link will take you to. This is the Air Horn channel, which is a companion channel to that channel. And here we have these raw vlogs, and we also do interviews and things like that. Let's go ahead and jump into this. In news, you probably already know that Sky Park has been open, and that's been pretty rad. I do believe they're starting to sell day passes, or maybe they've already started to do that. They had limited it previously to only people with season passes, but it seems like that's maybe opening up a little bit. You still have to schedule your arrival time. And the big news for me is that Snow Summit is opening up. I've already seen posts of people up there riding, so I'm not really sure when technically opening day is, but I will be up there this weekend. If as you're watching this, I'm probably already driving up to Snow Summit on for a weekend up there. Pretty stoked on that. There's going to be a new trail up there, which, as far as I know, isn't open yet, at least according to one of the trail crew up there. It's called Blue Steel, and that is supposed to be like a more beginner intermediate trail that's going to take the place of the trail like Average Joe's. So I'm hoping that I can actually film up there and get an edit out for Monday for opening day at Snow Summit. That's my hope. It's going to mean like probably having a pretty late night this weekend. So with that, I want to also talk a little bit about last week's Raw vlog number 50. First off, I want to say thanks to everybody for being kind in the comments. I know that there's been a lot of pushback within the community of people with mountain biking channels talking about things like race and ethnicity. And before if you're like a long-time watcher of raw vlogs, you were one of the people that were like into it. You may be coming here from the main channel to watch this, and before you start wondering like, why are we talking about these things on a mountain biking channel that makes you uncomfortable, I think sit with that discomfort for a moment, because the way I look at it is, if we're willing to talk about things like environmentalism, where we talk about the effects of carbon versus aluminum in mountain bikes, if we're willing to talk about things like the fact that mountain biking is maybe not as accessible to those who are less affluent than others because of the cost of mountain bikes, if we're willing to talk about those kind of things, I feel like it's a bit hypocritical of us to not be willing to talk about things like race and ethnicity, especially in our current times. Not because it's any better or worse than it has been for the last, several years. Not that it hasn't been a problem in the United States for the last several hundred years, but because now is a potential turning point for America to become what America really aspires to be, Anyway, so I do feel like these things should be part of our conversation. I recently looked at the top 100 ranked men in the EWS from last year. And I scrolled and scrolled, and there was not a single person of dark skin in that top 100. So what that says to me is that we're somewhat, at least within our racing culture, we're somewhat monochromatic, and personally, I feel like our mountain biking community could be a lot richer if there was more diversity, if there were more voices within our community. And speaking particularly about Black lives, I obviously am not the voice to be listening to in regards to that. I strongly encourage you to just kind of, if you don't already, spread out your content intake. Start looking to see what voices are coming out of the Black community. And if you don't feel like you have any real reason to do that, consider how much of your culture, how much of American culture comes from Black people. If you're unaware of that, just take a moment to think about it. I think these things are still important. I will put links in the description to one of the books that I'm currently reading, which is Between Me and the World, and some of the resources that I've been looking at and reading up on. I think these things are important, and I think the more we can be supportive and listen and learn, the better our mountain biking community can become. Yeah. So, with that, that's pretty much our news taken out of the way. Stoke of the week. This is a Stoke of the week that I did want to talk about. Stoke of the week. The Stoke of the week that I wanted to talk about last week, but I just really wasn't there emotionally and mentally to talk about, was the fact that I actually have a fair number of white friends who have reached out to me and who have just shown their ability to be open and open-minded and willing to learn and willing to self-reflect. And I find that to be pretty dang rad. And also seeing I'm now a prouder owner of a Santa Cruz bicycle, because looking at Santa Cruz's post, like a lot of people I don't know why, but a lot of people were getting comment flamed if they posted a black square on that Tuesday. And Santa Cruz did that, and their statement was so strong. And then I saw that Elliot Jackson commented on Santa Cruz's post and talked about how supportive that brand has been with him, how people like Greg Menard have stood up for him in situations where he was being, experiencing racial prejudice. I just thought that was rad. And then if you look at the comments, if you look at Santa Cruz's responses to some of the what I will call less enlightened comments in their comment thread, it's pretty rad. Like, they didn't pull any punches, and it just made me stoked to be on a Santa Cruz. So yeah, I will continue to represent that brand on my own. Not sponsored. # not sponsored. Yeah, that's my Stoke of the week. Yeah. I have a stuff I forgot, but it does get into one of the stories about some of my experiences from last raw vlog. If you want to hear about that, hit me in the comments. Maybe I'll share that with you next week. It's a pretty good one. It involves me interacting with four dudes with 4 bats. Let me know if you want to hear about that. Ask me anything. We are almost 10 minutes in, and this is going to be a long one. So everybody, settle in. And while you're in here, hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And you'll be getting these raw vlogs and interviews. If you haven't already checked out also the Remy Mateye interview, check that out. I did cut it up so that there's small pieces if you just want some bite-sized excerpts from that interview. Let's get into the Ask Me Anything. Okay, number 1 from Eskimo MTB. Let me put this over here so I'm not looking in a weird place. Okay, so from Eskimo MTB, He wants to know, how do you get better at berms, and do you brake at all those rock berms at the bottom of chutes? Chutes is a trail in Santiago Oaks in Orange County. So getting better at berms is part of it is doing a lot of them, because like every berm is kind of different, and you really by doing a lot of them you'll eventually get the fundamentals. But the main thing I think helps is two main things is, if you can, you should be off your brakes once you're in the berm. So your braking needs to happen before, so you're coming into the berm. Actually, for a lot of people, they should be coming into the berm a little bit slower than they think they should be, at least while you're getting the fundamentals. And then for a lot of berms, when you're going medium to lower speed, you want to think about coming in kind of high and then coming out low. So like hitting the berm early and high, and then kind of almost like pumping through it, almost like it's a quarter pipe, so that you're coming out low. Because really, it's with berms, it's about, and turns in general, it's about exit speed. If you're going, by the time you're getting like fast, like I think like if you're already hitting berms fast enough to just rail them, which means you hit them at one height basically and stay at that height, you probably don't need advice on riding berms. But yeah, the other thing is I did get asked in somewhere else about like foot position, and with foot position, I usually keep my feet pretty level. Sorry, cats. I'm gonna do something really quick here, because I just realized that somebody had asked me a question in one of my YouTube videos that I said I was going to answer in here, and I realized I didn't save it. So I'm going to try and like find that like as I'm talking. Contains questions. So while I'm doing that, Matt Kavanaugh asks, do you ever ride the Santa Monica Mountains? I don't think I have. Joseph Armendariz, two questions. Which knee pads are you wearing in this video? That would be the IXS Flow Zip. Love those knee pads. The Zip is not a problem. What was your most challenging MTB hurdle to overcome, and how are you able to overcome it? So that is... Sorry, I want to find this question. Man, I'm really sorry if I don't find this question. Boop, 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 raw and unedited. We're looking for a question. Man, I feel really bad because it was like a long question. If you're the person who I said that to, I'm not going to hold everybody up for that. I'm sorry, I didn't fully do my homework. I do have a bunch of questions. I will come back to that. I will find that, and we'll answer that. So the most challenging hurdle I've had to overcome, there's like, I can think of that in terms of a feature on the trail, and one of them was 650B up on Party Wave. It's the first jump. It's the wood ramp, and I rode Snow Summit for a number of years, rode past that jump so many times before I actually hit it. But I would say the real hurdle that I've had to overcome is my wrist injury. Dislocating my lunate has like really like, from a physical, mental, emotional, psychological standpoint, has had the biggest impact. I do ride differently now than I used to. I still like to go hard, but I am much more willing and much less ego-driven. I'm much less ego-driven when it comes to hitting a feature that I'm not confident on. And it was actually kind of cool to hear from Remy Mateye in that interview where he talked about he hits a feature if he's confident he's going to hit it. And you know, we're talking about a Red Bull Rampage rider, and it made it a little bit easier for me to just kind of follow that too. Obviously a totally different skill level, but I think it still applies. So overcoming that and like getting like, I of course wanted to get back on the bike, but just dealing with a jacked up wrist. That's been the biggest hurdle. Andy Ginther, How many takes do you have to do for your monologues? Uh, actually, quite a few. A lot of the time, it really depends, but a lot of the times it can take a while. I do write an outline, and I like to get it as smooth as possible. I like to get it in like a single cut, as few cuts as possible. But yeah, it can take a long time. Yeah. Thanks for that question. The Talk Father sent me like a whole bunch of questions, and I would love to answer all of them, but I'm going to answer one of them, which is, what do you like least about making content for your channel, and what do you like most? So honestly, what I like least is trying to find music. I'm very particular about the music that is playing. Like, it has to match the feeling from that day, and it has to also not be too distracting. It takes a long time for me to find just the right balance to find the right track that has the right balance of elements to match those clips. And that there's times when I've had like the edit done, and then I spend as much time or not more just trying to find 3 to 4 tracks. So what do I like most? I've kind of got a tie there. One of them is I love the craft of editing, of reviewing that day and thinking about that day, and then making cuts that just really make it work, but then also balancing that with keeping you as a viewer interested in the content. I know I may have loved looking at that whole trail, but if there's 3 turns that end up looking the same, being willing to cut that. One of the things in the creative process and designing and editing is there's a saying, which is you have to be willing to kill your darlings, murder your darlings. You have to kill your darlings. So there's going to be parts of the content that you as an editor, as the person who was there, you love, but they might not fit within the full theme or story or rhythm of that edit, and it hurts to get rid of those, but eventually you start enjoying it. It's almost like getting rid of a whole bunch of shirts or whatever that you haven't worn that have been taking up space in your drawer. Wow, what am I even talking about? Okay, this comes from Z9162805. Does your rear leg get fatigued when riding? Not so much. I do know my rear ankle gets a little bit wonky. That's maybe partly just because I have been a skateboarder for so long. But not really. I mean, I think I do train, I do a lot of squats, I do lunges, thrusters, I do what has been known as CrossFit. I'm kind of unwilling to use that term right now, just because there's some controversy going on with CrossFit and with racism right now. So not CrossFit, sorry, with the CEO of CrossFit, who actually just recently stepped down. Anyway, not totally related, but I do CrossFit methodology, basically put, to train, and I feel like that helps a lot. I think fitness is a big part of mountain biking, and if you don't do anything to support your fitness in the same way that you upgrade your bike or whatever, I think you should do that. I'm not talking to you specifically, but in general. JDog 400. Okay, got it. Do you know any good and cheap mountain bikes? And I think generally that I've had a lot of questions about what's a good cheap mountain bike. This is a really hard one, because it's kind of that thing where it's good and cheap. It's hard to really reconcile those two things. And it also depends on what cheap means to you. So it's really hard to answer this question. Really depends on what you're doing, what your terrain is like. In Southern California, you could get away with, a relatively low priced hardtail 29er and ride trails and have fun out there, and just kind of go on what I would call nature rides. If you, however, are more interested in doing like more chunky trails, like what you see in Laguna or Liso or Santiago Oaks or any of those kind of things, the capability of the bike needs to start increasing. And at that point, the price starts increasing. So it also, like, it depends on is this your first mountain bike? And in those cases, each buy a used hardtail that's not more than 4 years, 3 to 4 years old if you can. So really hard to answer that question without more information. Tony actually hit me up. Tony, the outsider MTB, hit me up with a couple of questions. One is, are you ever going to get a trail dog? Probably not, unless I end up moving to like a place where I can have acres and acres of land and not spend $7 million in order to do that. Just because I like a lot of space for a dog, because I'd probably have like a mid-sized sedan dog, a mid-sized off-road sedan dog. Is that a thing? Off-road sedans? The outsider also asked, what's the one thing you wish you knew when you started your channel that you could pass on to other aspiring YouTubers? This is a really great question. I think the main thing I wish I knew, and I knew this, I just hadn't applied this to YouTube, but the one thing you have that nobody else has is you, is your face, is your personality. And even if you feel like you don't have much personality, it's yours. And that's your core asset. It's who you are and what you're about. Bring that to the forefront, or, at least kind of do that. And I think basically don't be afraid to take risks. Just get out there and start just doing it. I already knew to put out content regularly, but I think that was the one thing I didn't really know or really put to heart. So do that if you're an aspiring mountain bike YouTuber. Marty Richards, aka Octodad MTB. How do you help people to get into and enjoy mountain bikes, specifically adult dudes? I don't think that's that hard to do, honestly. I think the barriers really lie with women and with a lot of people of color, and those are very different reasons that kind of go into that. But I think one thing that we generally do when we're on the trail is we're open to people. But I think the biggest thing that's going to get more people who are not like directly attracted to mountain bikes, the best thing that's going to get those people attracted to mountain biking is seeing people like them or seeing a bigger diversity within our community. And then after that, I think once they're on the bike, it's like always meeting them where they're at and always remembering where you came from as a beginner mountain biker and things like that. And don't concentrate too much on the gear. I see that happen where people are like, you got to get this kind of capability for your bike or else you can't ride. These trails are too much. I just like, get a bike, ride. Sweet JD from Instagram asks, what are the pros and cons of going wide and narrow? This was part of a discussion about like tires, having a wide tire in the front and a narrow in the back. I think that was kind of, wide versus narrow, and then why wide in the front and narrow in the back. This gets kind of technical because a wider tire is good if it's matched with a wheel with wider internal width, because it really kind of squares off that tire and it gives you better cornering edges. It also gives you better, like more like contact with the ground when you're going straight. And so that's why like a wider tire can be better. If you put a wider tire, however, on a narrower wheel, then you get like this kind of bulbous tire, which is maybe not as good. So it really needs to be a match of wheel to tire. And then wide in the front and narrow in the back. A lot of this just has to do with the fact that you don't need as much cornering grip on your rear tire as you do on your front tire, or you don't benefit as much. You get like a diminishing returns if you have like a big wide back tire. Also, that's going to like save a little bit of weight to have it in the back. And the back tire really kind of, you want the center lugs, knobs, lugs or knobs. Why those are those lugs or knobs in the center are for your climbing traction. Also, a lot of the bikes can't really fit a big fat tire in the back. Actually, Maxxis was really trying to figure out whether they were going to use the word lug or knob in their marketing, and they finally decided to just use the term that gains more traction. Yeah. Okay. MTB Cisco Kid. Hope all is well. Fan of you and Tony. Any suggestions for beginner trails, for example, Chutes and Roadrunner Loop in Irvine? I don't know Roadrunner Loop in Irvine. Chutes is, you can ride it as a beginner trail. You may need to skip the waterfall feature at the top. But yeah, beginner trails. Man, it really depends on what you mean by beginner trails. I know I took my wife up to Irvine Regional Park, and there's the trail that's just kind of like flat like before you go up the ridge, like if you're like park at like parking lot 6 at Irvine Regional. And that was a great trail for her to get into because it's kind of single track. It has like, if you're like never been on a bike on the dirt before, it's got some areas that are like slightly challenging, different terrain, and it's beautiful, you know, like maybe it can be a little bit hot obviously in the summer, but it's got it. The one thing I would say about getting somebody into mountain biking, especially somebody who's like totally a noob, is you want to get them on a trail that has like a low investment and high payoff, and that's a perfect example of that. Whoa, sorry, not an earthquake. It's just me hitting the table. Everything's okay. Okay, so I got a number of questions about facial hair from RADO and Jeremy Lee, who called it my lip ferret. I've had a bunch of questions about the facial hair, like why and whatever, and how long have I had it. Like it really kind of started from, I always like, I just kind of like doing stuff that makes me look a little bit like a little off. I don't know what that is. Like that's something that's kind of been in me ever since I was a teenager, you know, like I would wear like stupid stuff all the time. And now that my uniform is basically like black jeans and black t-shirts or blue jeans and black t-shirts, I had to find something else to do. And I was getting my driver's license, new driver's license photo in 2017, and I decided that's when I was going to do it. So I've had it since about April of 2017, and now it's part of the brand, you know, so we're going to stick with it. A bunch of questions from Rystein 29, MB 60274, and Jackson Foster 11 about me riding Snow Valley. I do plan to head up there this summer at some point. I'm not really sure when that's going to happen, but I would like to go and check it out again. I know there's a bunch of more trails up there, so I'll probably do that and then share my thoughts with that place. I've had a number of people ask me about subscriber meetups. Simon Angier and Chris Buchi. What's up, Chris? Chris, I love your Twitch streams. Are they Twitch streams? I don't know, but your recordings of this. What is the video game you play? I forget, but it's mountain biking, and it like totally cracks me up. Love that stuff. If you haven't checked out Chris Bucci's channel, check it out. It's pretty. He does some pretty fun stuff. Subscriber meetup. I think maybe if once we get kind of out of social distancing, we kind of need to do that first. And maybe once the path starts doing group rides again, we'll kind of do like we did before and organize a group ride with them. And then maybe once I hit 10,000 subscribers on my main channel, we'll do a subscriber meetup. So I don't have anything really planned, but you know, I ride all the normal places. So go there and then give me a shout if you see me on the trail. A lot of people asking me if I'm going to be up at Snow Summit for opening day. For instance, MTB Luke 14 and your boy Raymond, your bro Raymond asked me, as well as a number of other people. Sorry, camera just, I don't know what it did. It stopped recording. Snow Summit opening day. I will be up there opening weekend. So yes, I'm going to be up there. I love this question from Katie. Katie, who's a writing buddy, asked me if you could uninvent something, what would you uninvent and why? I'm probably going to get flack for this, but I kind of would uninvent the detachable chin bar helmets. Yeah, I know people love them and they speak about them. I kind of don't like the way they look. I really don't like the way they look. I haven't really seen any. If you know of one that like looks good, let me know in the comments. But every time I see one, I'm just like, oh, they just don't look good. And especially now when you have stuff like the TLD and the Fox Pro Frame, like they're pretty light and they work just fine. Okay, so we're getting into it. So I'm gonna try to bust through these, and I'm running out of card space. Worst crash from Max Tracks asked me what's my worst crash, and that was obviously me on 10-ply dislocating my lunate, breaking my wrist. Bastian Highbed asks, how old are you? 47? 73, 2020, 47? Is that right? Okay. Who would be your dream sponsor? Santa Cruz would be I would love to be sponsored by Santa Cruz bikes. Why do so many people hate on entry-level bikes and upgrading them? I don't know if that's a thing. I haven't seen that. I think we all love a new bike and we would love to get all the new fancy stuff. But yeah. Apologies, I might have to cut here in a second and download this footage and then start re-recording again because I only have like 7 minutes left on here. What's the biggest lesson you've learned? So that last question was from, yeah, I said that. Okay. Ernesto Nava 93 says, that was Ernesto who asked that question. Adam Mock asks, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from MTB that you've applied to life? I feel like I'm kind of the other way around, where I've taken lessons from my life and applied them to mountain biking. And that is, like learn to be uncomfortable. Where you're uncomfortable is where you're going to grow, whether that's in strength, skill, cultural, emotional, psychological, whatever. I think the best conditioning I've had, or the biggest thing that I've gone through that I think has expanded my character or deepened my character, is going through the wrist injury, and coming through that. Maybe the biggest thing I learned, or maybe just took to heart, is how much community plays a part in our level of happiness, how much we get from that. Because when my wrist was broken and in healing and I couldn't do anything with my hand or my wrist, and I really had the community around me to help me keep from getting too depressed or go too crazy. So that was what I kind of learned, I guess. That's what my heart learned. It was less of an intellectual lesson and more of a heart lesson. Have you tested out that Asagai yet? Thoughts? I've just kind of ridden it once up at Sky Park and it was a bit sloppy. I did dig it. I did feel like it was more planted, and that's kind of what I was looking for with that. Especially we'll see what it does on the chunky stuff, but I think it's going to do really well. One thing I found interesting is it has those intermediate knobs, and those actually hook up on wider radius turns. So if normally I know when my DHF is going to hook up, it's at when the bike is at a certain angle. And the Asagai seems to have multiple angles that it'll hook up on. So that's pretty interesting. We'll see how I feel about that. Good, and that was the Bearded Wonder 86. And then Jared Jones asks, good tubeless rim and tire setup for not too much money. Again, it depends on what too much money is. If $500 is not too much money, You can get like WTB or race face, aluminum rims, all spoked up, threaded up, laced up to some okay hubs and be okay. And you can even get like at that price range, you can get like a decent internal rim width. I think even the Crank Brothers synthesis wheels, you can get aluminum ones for around $500 or $600. So if that's not too much money, then I would go that route. Don't get used wheels. EXT Jerry, if you could, I'm guessing, ride or own any make or model, maxed out specs, what would you choose? I think it's kind of funny because I don't feel like we don't really have like the Honda Civic of bike and then like the Lamborghini of bike, although there's some Lamborghinis of bikes, but everything's like the bike geometries and whatnot are all pretty good out there. So I would probably, either maybe get a Nomad, like the brand new Nomad, whatever that's going to look like. I'm curious if they're going to change the layup on that. So maybe just something with a bit more travel than I currently have that climbs just as well, whatever that would be. I really love my Bronson. It's just treated me really well. And because of my ambassadorship with the Path, I get pretty good pricing on that. So I have one of the higher end models. But if I want to think about maxing out specs, I would get the Axis the Axis derailleur and shifter. So I have fewer cables. And then I don't know really what else I would upgrade. I don't know. My bike's pretty nice. I guess it's weird. I don't have that part. I don't have that gear in my head that thinks about the dream bike. I just love the ones that make me hoot and holler and that I don't think about when I'm riding it. Let me make sure I'm not skipping anything. Jackson Foster asked me a bunch of questions, but I'm going to answer all of them, or a couple of questions because I think they're good questions. What shoes do you suggest for mountain biking? Jackson asks. If you don't know anything about mountain biking shoes, get some 510 free riders for flat pedal shoes. If you want to get some clip-ins, I can't really speak to that. I know 510 makes clip-in shoes too, but tried and true 510 free riders. If you're just getting into it, if you want to upgrade from the free riders, I really love the Free Rider Pros. They have a much more precise feel, and they actually soak up more of the chatter than the regular free riders. I would go with those. I'm actually really digging the Trail Cross LTs, especially in the summer heat because they breathe really well. And will I be learning? Jackson also asked, will I be learning new tricks for content? I actually don't think too much about doing stuff for content when I'm riding. I'm just kind of documenting my day. But I will be working on getting my whips better. I was just getting them going before I broke my wrist last year at Snow Summit. So I want to kind of start getting that going again and just generally improving my jumping. And of course, I got to work on my wheelies and manuals. So yeah, will I do videos on those? Maybe. I mean, that's some evergreen content that everybody's always getting the clicks on. So yeah, maybe that's what I should have said to you, Tony, when you asked what do I wish I had known. Think about evergreen content, because if you look at anybody posting how to manual or how to wheelie, how to jump, how to whatever, those get the hits. Of course, you kind of need to know how to do those things and need to know how to put together an instructional video. So my answer still stands. Your face is the thing that you should use. Wow, I think I'm going to get this. We've got 50-something seconds left on this card, so I'm going to call that it. Thank you so much for hitting me with all those questions. I'm stoked to answer them. I'm stoked that you all got us to 6K subscribers. Let's get this Airhorn podcast up to 1,000 subscribers so we can unleash some more of its potential on YouTube. So check to see if you're subscribed. If you're not, hit that subscribe button. Hope you dug this. Hit the like button. I've got 25 seconds left. And I need some 20 seconds at the end where I can put the little things so you can click on these things, do the stuff, click it, watch the other thing, hit the subscribe button, stuff like that. Thanks for all the questions. Yeah. See y'all on the trail. See you next week.